The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the hospital windows as Dr. Thomas Wright shuffled through the stack of patient files on his desk. The emergency department was unusually busy that day, and his irritation grew with each new case that landed before him. When the nurse handed him the file for Eleanor Johnston, a 78-year-old woman complaining of chest pain, he barely glanced at it before dropping it at the bottom of his pile. Another one, he muttered under his breath loud enough for the nearby staff to hear, these elderly patients with their endless problems. Nurse Lisa Chen approached his desk cautiously. "Dr. Wright, Mrs. Johnston's vitals are concerning. Her blood pressure is elevated and she's experiencing significant shortness of breath. Her daughter mentioned she hasn't taken her heart medication for several days." Dr. Wright looked up from his computer with obvious annoyance. The lines on his face deepened as he frowned. "Is she actively dying right now?" he asked coldly. "Well, no, but then she can wait like everyone else," he interrupted, turning back to his screen. "The emergency room isn't a retirement home. We have younger patients with actual emergencies." Nurse Chen stood her ground. "Sir, heart disease at her age is serious. The symptoms suggest possible heart failure." Dr. Wright pushed his chair back and stood up, towering over the nurse. The nearby conversations quieted as staff and patients turned to watch the exchange. "Listen, I've been doing this job for 20 years, he said, his voice sharp. "These elderly patients come in here all the time thinking every little pain is the end of the world. They forget their pills, don't follow instructions, then expect us to drop everything when they have the exact symptoms we warned them about." In the waiting area, Mrs. Johnston sat hunched in her wheelchair, her weathered hands clutching her chest. Her face had taken on a grayish pallor. Her daughter, a woman in her 50s with worry etched across her face, kept checking her watch and looking anxiously toward the nurse's station. "Mom, just hold on a little longer," she whispered, squeezing her mother's shoulder gently. "They'll call us soon." Back at the desk, Dr. Wright was making no effort to lower his voice. "She's just another hypochondriac wasting hospital resources. Put her in the waiting room. If she's still here when I've handled the real emergencies, I'll take a look." Nurse Chen's face flushed with anger, but she maintained her professional composure. "I'll note your decision in the chart, doctor," she said evenly, taking the file back. As she walked away, Dr. Wright called after her, "And don't come bothering me again about this. Some of these people need to accept that they're at the end of their road." Several patients in the waiting area exchanged uncomfortable glances. A young intern who had been observing the exchange quickly turned away, pretending to study a chart. Nurse Chen returned to Mrs. Johnston and her daughter, her professional smile masking her concern and frustration. "The doctor has reviewed your case," she explained gently. "He's asked that you wait a bit longer while we handle some critical cases." "But my mother's in pain," the daughter protested, her voice rising slightly. "She can barely breathe. Shouldn't that be considered critical?" "I understand your concern," Nurse Chen replied, kneeling to check Mrs. Johnston's pulse. The elderly woman's skin felt clammy, and her breathing had become more labored. "I'm going to keep monitoring her closely while you wait." As Nurse Chen adjusted the oxygen flow for Mrs. Johnston, she noticed Dr. Robert Patel, the chief of medicine, making his rounds through the emergency department. He was known for his hands-on approach and commitment to patient care, regularly checking in on various departments despite his administrative responsibilities. Nurse Chen hesitated, torn between protocol and her concern for her patient. Making a quick decision, she approached Dr. Patel as he finished speaking with another staff member. "Dr. Patel, do you have a moment?" she asked quietly. "Of course, Lisa," he replied, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "What can I help with?" Nurse Chen briefly explained Mrs. Johnston's situation and Dr. Wright's response. Dr. Patel's expression grew serious as he listened. "Where is the patient now?" he asked. "In the waiting area, sir. Her condition seems to be getting worse," Dr. Patel nodded. "Let's take a look." As they walked toward Mrs. Johnston, they passed Dr. Wright, who was laughing with another doctor near the break room. His voice carried down the hallway. "These elderly patients with chronic conditions are clogging up the system," he was saying. "That Johnston woman will just have to wait her turn. Not like she has anywhere important to be." Dr. Patel stopped in his tracks. He turned slowly, his normally gentle demeanor hardening. Dr. Wright, noticing the chief of medicine for the first time, straightened up and attempted a collegial smile. "Dr. Patel, didn't see you there," he said, his tone suddenly professional. Just discussing department efficiency. Is that what you call it? Dr. Patel replied coolly. I'd like to speak with you after I examine this patient you've deemed unworthy of your time. The color drained from Dr. Wright's face as Dr. Patel continued toward the waiting area with Nurse Chen. When they reached Mrs. Johnston, her condition had visibly deteriorated. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, and she was barely responsive to her daughter's voice. How long has she been like this? Dr. Patel asked, immediately taking her pulse. It's gotten worse in the last 20 minutes, the daughter explained, tears in her eyes. Please help her. She's all I have left. Get her into Bay 3 immediately, Dr. Patel instructed Nurse Chen. Page cardiology for a consult, and let's start her on oxygen and get an EKG right away. As they rushed Mrs. Johnston into the treatment area, Dr. Patel spoke reassuringly to her. Mrs. Johnston, I'm Dr. Patel. We're going to take good care of you. Just try to relax if you can. The elderly woman's eyes, clouded with fear and pain, locked onto his. She gave a small nod, her trust immediate and complete. While Dr. Patel worked to stabilize Mrs. Johnston, Nurse Chen gathered the documentation of the incident. She wasn't the only one. Several other staff members approached her, sharing their own experiences with Dr. Wright's behavior toward elderly patients. He told Mr. Rivera last week that he was taking up a bed. Someone else could use, one nurse whispered. And he refused to prescribe pain medication for Mrs. Taylor because he said it was a waste on someone her age, added another. Nurse Chen carefully noted each account, her hand trembling slightly with the responsibility of what she was doing. In treatment Bay 3, Mrs. Johnston's condition was beginning to stabilize. The EKG confirmed she was experiencing heart failure, likely triggered by the missed medication but exacerbated by the stress and extended wait. If we'd waited much longer, Dr. Patel said quietly to Nurse Chen, we might have lost her. He straightened his white coat and checked his watch. It had been exactly 30 minutes since Dr. Wright had refused to see Mrs. Johnston. Lisa, please ask the hospital administrator to meet me in my office, he said, and find Dr. Wright. Tell him his presence is required immediately. As Nurse Chen hurried away, Dr. Patel took a moment to update Mrs. Johnston's daughter on her mother's condition. We're getting her stabilized, he explained gently. She'll need to be admitted, but she's responding well to treatment. If you had waited much longer. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Thank you, the daughter whispered, tears streaming down her face. I kept telling them something was wrong. Thank you for listening. Dr. Patel squeezed her shoulder gently. It's not just my job, he said. It's basic human decency. With one last check on his patient, Dr. Patel headed toward his office, his mind already formulating what needed to be said and done. In his 30 years of medicine, he had seen countless examples of burnout and compassion fatigue, but what he had witnessed today went beyond that. It was time for some difficult but necessary changes in his emergency department. Nurse Lisa Chen couldn't shake the image of Mrs. Johnston's frightened eyes from her mind as she hurried down the hospital corridor. The elderly woman's condition had been deteriorating right before everyone's eyes, while Dr. Wright had dismissed her as just another burden on the system. 20 years as a nurse had taught Lisa many things, but the most important lesson was that every patient deserved dignity, regardless of their age or condition. She found Dr. Wright in the break room, casually sipping coffee while scrolling through his phone. A few other staff members sat at the far end of the room, their conversations hushed as she entered. Dr. Wright, she said, keeping her voice level despite her racing heart. Dr. Patel has requested your presence in his office immediately. Dr. Wright barely looked up. I'm on my break. Tell him I'll stop by when I'm done. Lisa took a deep breath. Sir, the chief of medicine specifically said immediately. It's regarding Mrs. Johnston, the elderly patient with heart disease. At this, Dr. Wright's head snapped up, his expression shifting from annoyance to something closer to concern. What about her? She's been admitted to cardiac care. Dr. Patel took over her case personally. The color drained from Dr. Wright's face. He set down his coffee cup with a shaking hand, sloshing some of the dark liquid onto the table. Patel did what? He's waiting for you in his office, sir. The hospital administrator is joining them as well. The other staff in the room had gone completely silent now, watching the exchange with unconcealed interest. Dr. Wright stood up, abruptly knocking his chair backward. Fine. he muttered, straightening his white coat. This is ridiculous. I was following triage protocols. As he brushed past her, Lisa noticed a bead of sweat forming on his temple despite the cool air conditioning. She watched him stride down the hallway, his usual confidence visibly shaken. Meanwhile, Mrs. Johnston's daughter sat beside her mother's hospital bed, gently holding the older woman's hand. The cardiac care unit was quieter than the emergency department, the beeping of monitors creating a rhythm that was somehow both concerning and reassuring. You gave me such a fright, Mom, she whispered, brushing a strand of silver hair from her mother's forehead. Mrs. Johnston's eyes fluttered open, clearer now that oxygen was flowing properly through her system. I'm sorry, dear, she said, her voice weak but steady. I didn't want to be a bother. You're never a bother, her daughter insisted, fighting back tears. Never think that. A soft knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Dr. Patel entered, his kind eyes taking in the scene before him. How are we feeling, Mrs. Johnston? He asked, approaching the bed. Better, doctor. Thank you for helping me. Dr. Patel checked her vitals on the monitor, nodding with satisfaction. Your numbers are improving nicely. The medication is working as expected. He turned to her daughter. She'll need to stay with us for a few days while we adjust her medication and monitor her heart function. Of course, the daughter replied. Whatever she needs. Dr. Patel made a few notes in the chart before speaking again. Mrs. Johnston, I want to apologize for your experience in our emergency department today. What happened was unacceptable and not representative of the care we strive to provide. Mrs. Johnston waved a frail hand dismissively. I understand you're all very busy. That doctor seemed to have a lot on his mind. Busyness is no excuse for what happened, Dr. Patel said firmly. Rest assured, I'm addressing the situation personally. He checked his watch. In fact, I need to attend to that matter now. A nurse will be checking on you regularly, but please use the call button if you need anything at all. As Dr. Patel left the room, he squared his shoulders, mentally preparing himself for the difficult conversation ahead. He had always believed in second chances, in the capacity for people to learn and grow, but some mistakes crossed lines that couldn't be ignored. Back in the emergency department, word had begun to spread. Whispers passed from staff to staff, theories about what might happen to Dr. Wright multiplying with each telling. Some defended him, citing the pressure and understaffing that had become common in recent months. Others recounted similar incidents they had witnessed or experienced with him. Nurse Chen continued her rounds, professionally deflecting questions from curious colleagues. But when a young nursing student approached her, eyes wide with admiration, Lisa paused. Is it true what they're saying? The student asked in a hushed voice. Did you really stand up to Dr. Wright? Lisa sighed. I didn't stand up to anyone. I advocated for my patient, which is my job. It's your job too, even when it's difficult. She placed a hand on the student's shoulder, especially when it's difficult. In Dr. Patel's office, the tension was palpable. The hospital administrator, Mrs. Diane Reynolds, sat beside Dr. Patel behind the large oak desk. Across from them, Dr. Wright had taken a seat, his earlier swagger replaced by defensive posturing. I'm not sure why I've been called in here like a misbehaving student, Dr. Wright began, attempting to take control of the conversation. If this is about the Johnston woman, I made a professional judgment call based on our triage protocols. Mrs. Reynolds leaned forward, her expression grave. Dr. Wright, we've received multiple reports about your interaction with Mrs. Johnston today, including your refusal to examine her despite clear indications of cardiac distress. The waiting room was full, he protested. I had to prioritize. And yet, Dr. Patel interjected, you found time to take a coffee break while she struggled to breathe. Dr. Wright's face flushed. But it's not just about today, is it? Dr. Patel continued, opening a folder on his desk. We have documentation of at least 7 incidents in the past month alone where you've shown concerning bias against elderly patients. Mrs. Reynolds nodded. We've also received formal complaints from family members of 3 different patients all over the age of 70, all describing similar experiences. Dr. Wright's expression hardened. Those complaints are exaggerated. Family members get emotional when their elderly relatives are sick. They don't understand the realities of emergency medicine. And what realities would those be? Dr. Patel asked quietly. Resources are limited. Difficult decisions have to be made. I prioritize patients with the best chances of meaningful recovery, Dr. Wright stated, as if reciting from a textbook. It's basic utilitarian ethics. The room fell silent for a moment as Dr. Patel and Mrs. Reynolds exchanged glances. Thomas, Dr. Patel said finally, using Dr. Wright's first name for the first time. I've known you for nearly a decade. You were once one of our most promising physicians. What happened to the doctor who used to sit with patients after his shift ended, just to make sure they understood their discharge instructions? Dr. Wright looked away, unable to meet Dr. Patel's gaze. This job changes you, he muttered. The job can be difficult, yes, Mrs. Reynolds acknowledged, but it doesn't change your fundamental obligation to treat all patients with dignity and appropriate care. Dr. Patel slid a document across the desk. We've reviewed the situation carefully, including your history and today's incident. Mrs. Johnston could have died due to your negligence. Your actions violated not only hospital policy, but potentially constitute age discrimination and patient abandonment. Dr. Wright stared at the document, the words termination of employment standing out in bold type at the top of the page. You're firing me? He asked incredulously. Over one old woman? No, Dr. Patel corrected him. We're terminating your employment due to a pattern of discriminatory behavior and substandard care that puts patients at risk. The decision is effective immediately. Dr. Wright's shock quickly transformed into anger. You can't do this. I'm one of your best doctors. Ask anyone about my diagnostic skills, my success rates with younger patients. A doctor who picks and chooses which patients deserve care based on age is not a doctor at all, Mrs. Reynolds said firmly. You'll need to clear out your locker and surrender your hospital ID. Security will escort you from the building. As if on cue, a security officer appeared in the doorway. Dr. Wright looked from the officer to his former colleagues, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. This is a mistake, he said, his voice suddenly hollow. You'll regret this when your ER is backed up tomorrow. Dr. Patel stood. What I would regret is allowing a physician who has lost his compassion to continue treating vulnerable patients. I wish you well, Dr. Wright, and I hope you find your way back to the healer you once were. As Dr. Wright was escorted down the hallway, staff members watched in stunned silence. Through the window of the cardiac care unit, he caught a glimpse of Mrs. Johnston, now resting comfortably under Dr. Patel's care. Their eyes met briefly across the distance, the elderly woman offering a small, confused smile, unaware that her case had just changed the course of his career. Outside the hospital doors, Dr. Wright stood in the fading afternoon light, his white coat folded over his arm, wondering how 30 minutes could unravel 20 years of his life. Back inside, Nurse Chen watched from the nurse's station as Dr. Patel returned to check on Mrs. Johnston once more. The news was already spreading throughout the department. Standing up for what was right mattered, no matter who you had to stand up to. Dr. Robert Patel stood in the doorway of Mrs. Johnston's room, taking a moment to gather his thoughts before entering. The events of the afternoon had left him emotionally drained, but there was still much work to be done. Firing Dr. Wright had been necessary but painful. He remembered the bright young doctor who had once shown such promise. Somewhere along the way, that compassionate physician had been lost to burnout and cynicism. Dr. Patel? Mrs. Johnston called softly from her bed, noticing him in the doorway. Is everything all right? He entered with a warm smile, pushing his troubled thoughts aside. Everything is much better now, Mrs. Johnston. How are you feeling? The elderly woman adjusted herself slightly against her pillows. The gray pallor that had frightened her daughter so much in the emergency room had faded, replaced by a healthier color in her cheeks. The oxygen tubes in her nose remained, but her breathing was steadier now. Like I've been run over by a truck, she replied with surprising humor. But I suppose that's better than the alternative. Her daughter, who had been dozing in the chair beside the bed, stirred and straightened up. Is there any news, doctor? Good news, Dr. Patel assured them both. Your mother's latest tests show significant improvement. The medication is working well. He pulled up a rolling stool and sat down, taking the time that Dr. Wright had refused to give. I'd like to talk to you both about what happened today, if you don't mind. Mrs. Johnston's daughter tensed visibly. Is this about that other doctor? The one who wouldn't see her? Dr. Patel nodded. Yes, first I want to apologize again for the way you were treated. It was unacceptable. What will happen to him? Mrs. Johnston asked, her voice free of anger, merely curious. Dr. Patel chose his words carefully. He's no longer working at this hospital. But more importantly, we're taking steps to ensure nothing like this happens to another patient. Outside in the hallway, Nurse Chen was gathering statements from other staff members who had witnessed Dr. Wright's behavior, not just toward Mrs. Johnston, but toward other elderly patients in recent months. The young nursing student from earlier approached her again, clipboard in hand. "Excuse me, Nurse Chen. I've been assigned to help you collect information about what happened today." Lisa smiled at the young woman. "Thank you, May. That would be helpful." She handed over several forms. "These need to go to Human Resources. And could you check in with the nurses in cardiac care? They should have Mrs. Johnston's updated charts." As May hurried off, Lisa caught sight of two orderlies whispering nearby, occasionally glancing her way. Word traveled fast in hospitals. By now, everyone knew about Dr. Wright's dismissal and her role in bringing his behavior to light. One of the orderlies, a man named Joe who had worked at the hospital for over 15 years, approached her. "Just wanted to say, what you did today, standing up to Dr. Wright, about time someone did." Lisa shook her head. "I was just doing my job, Joe. We all need to look out for our patients." Joe leaned in, lowering his voice. "Yeah, but not everyone does. Some folks are too scared of doctors like Wright." "You weren't." Before Lisa could respond, her pager beeped. The emergency department was requesting her return. They were short-staffed after Dr. Wright's sudden departure. As she headed back downstairs, she couldn't help but wonder how many other Mrs. Johnstons there had been before today. Elderly patients who had suffered silently under Dr. Wright's discriminatory care. Meanwhile, the hospital administrator, Mrs. Reynolds, had convened an emergency meeting with the heads of each department. The conference room was packed, the atmosphere tense as she explained what had occurred. "The situation with Dr. Wright has brought to light a serious issue that we need to address immediately," she began, her normally calm voice carrying an edge of urgency. "Age discrimination in patient care will not be tolerated in this hospital." Dr. Patel, who had joined the meeting after checking on Mrs. Johnston, spoke up. "This isn't just about one doctor or one incident. We need to examine our entire approach to geriatric care." A murmur of agreement spread through the room. Dr. Reynolds, head of orthopedics, raised his hand. "I've had patients tell me they were treated dismissively in the ER because of their age. I assumed they were exaggerating." "We can't assume anything," Mrs. Reynolds replied firmly. "We need concrete changes starting today." Back in the cardiac care unit, Mrs. Johnston's daughter had stepped out to make some phone calls, leaving the elderly woman alone with her thoughts. Despite her improving condition, a shadow of hurt remained from the way Dr. Wright had treated her, or rather refused to treat her. At 78, she had grown somewhat accustomed to being overlooked, to having her concerns dismissed as the complaints of an old woman. But she had never expected it from a doctor, someone sworn to help those in need. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Nurse May entered carrying a clipboard. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mrs. Johnston," the young nursing student said. "I just need to check your vitals again." Mrs. Johnston smiled at the girl who couldn't be much older than her youngest granddaughter. "You're not disturbing me at all, dear. It's nice to have the company." As May took her blood pressure and temperature, Mrs. Johnston studied her face. "You're new here, aren't you?" May nodded. "I'm in my final rotation before graduation." "Today has been quite educational." Mrs. Johnston chuckled softly. "I imagine it has been. Nothing teaches like real-life drama, does it?" The young woman hesitated, then asked, "Does it bother you? What happened with that doctor?" Mrs. Johnston considered the question carefully. Yes and no. Yes, because no one likes to feel they don't matter. But no, because I've lived long enough to know that most people are good at heart. For every person who looks past you, there's someone like Dr. Patel or Nurse Chen who sees you clearly. May finished recording the vitals, her expression thoughtful. "I hope I can be like them when I'm a full nurse." "I have a feeling you will be," Mrs. Johnston assured her. In the hospital administrator's office, Dr. Patel and Mrs. Reynolds were finalizing an action plan. The termination of Dr. Wright was just the beginning. Systemic changes were needed to prevent similar incidents in the future. "I want new training protocols for all staff," Mrs. Reynolds said, making notes on her tablet, "with special emphasis on elder care and recognizing age bias. And we should review our triage procedures," Dr. Patel added. "Ensure they're being properly implemented." Mrs. Reynolds nodded in agreement. "What about Dr. Wright's current patients?" We'll need to reassign them. I've already started the process, Dr. Patel assured her. Dr. Lee has agreed to take most of them, and I'll handle the rest until we can find a permanent replacement. A knock at the door interrupted them. The hospital's legal counsel, a sharp-minded woman named Patricia Torres, entered with a concerned expression. I've reviewed the documentation on Dr. Wright, she said without preamble. The termination was justified, but we should prepare for the possibility of him challenging it. Mrs. Reynolds sighed. You think he'll fight this? People with his level of arrogance often do, Ms. Torres replied. But the evidence is solid. Multiple witnesses, documented pattern of behavior, clear violation of hospital policy. If he does challenge it, we're on firm ground. Dr. Patel rubbed his tired eyes. Let's hope he takes this as an opportunity for self-reflection instead. Back in the emergency department, the atmosphere had shifted subtly. Nurse Chen noticed it as soon as she returned. A new attentiveness among the staff, a heightened awareness of every patient, particularly the elderly ones. Dr. Wright's dramatic departure had sent a clear message. Patient care came first, regardless of age. An older man with a walking cane was brought in complaining of dizziness. Lisa watched as the attending physician, Dr. Garcia, spent extra time with him, listening carefully to his description of symptoms, asking thoughtful follow-up questions. It was exactly the kind of care Mrs. Johnston should have received. As her shift neared its end, Lisa made one final visit to the cardiac care unit. Mrs. Johnston was sleeping peacefully, her vital signs stable on the monitor. Her daughter looked up from her book as Lisa entered. How is she doing? Lisa asked softly. Much better, the daughter replied. Dr. Patel says she might be able to go home in a few days. She set her book aside. I wanted to thank you for standing up for her when that other doctor wouldn't. Lisa felt a lump form in her throat. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do, the woman insisted. My mother has been invisible to too many people for too long. You saw her. Outside the hospital, the day was ending. Staff from the day shift streamed out into the parking lot, replaced by those arriving for the night shift. Among them was Dr. Lee, hurrying in to take over Dr. Wright's patients, her face set with determination to provide the care they deserved. In the hospital cafeteria, a group of nurses, including May, were discussing the day's events over coffee. I can't believe they actually fired him, one of them said. Usually doctors like that just get a slap on the wrist. Things are changing, another replied. About time, too. May sipped her coffee thoughtfully. Nurse Chen said something today that stuck with me. She said advocating for patients is our job, especially when it's difficult. The others nodded in agreement. One of the older nurses smiled. She's right. And what happened today proves that speaking up matters. As darkness fell over the hospital, the lights of the cardiac care unit remained bright. Mrs. Johnston slept on, unaware that her case had sparked a small revolution in patient care. Tomorrow, new protocols would begin to take shape. Training would be scheduled, policies reviewed, and in emergency departments and hospital wards, elderly patients would be truly seen perhaps a little more clearly than before. For now, though the monitors beeped steadily, nurses made their rounds, and the business of healing continued through the night, as it always had and always would. Dr. Thomas Wright sat in his car in the hospital parking lot, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had turned white. 30 minutes. That's all it had taken for his career at Memorial Hospital to come crashing down. 20 years of service, countless lives saved. And it was all over because of one elderly patient he had deemed low priority. The unfairness of it burned in his chest like acid. He glanced at his phone, which had been buzzing nonstop since he'd left the building. Colleagues, friends, his wife, all wanting to know what had happened. How could he explain it? How could he tell his wife that he'd been fired on the spot, escorted out by security like a common criminal? With a deep breath, he finally picked up his phone and called her. Linda? Yeah, it's me. Something's happened. I'll tell you when I get home. Hanging up, he started the car and pulled out of the parking space he'd used for 2 decades. As he drove past the emergency entrance, he caught sight of an ambulance unloading an elderly patient. His jaw clenched involuntarily. Back inside the hospital, the news of Dr. Wright's termination had spread like wildfire. In the staff locker room, opinions were divided. Some nurses and doctors whispered that it was harsh. A warning or suspension would have been sufficient. Others argued that it had been a long time coming. "He's been treating elderly patients like that for years," a veteran nurse named Judy commented as she changed out of her scrubs. "Remember Mr. Peterson last month? The 82-year-old with pneumonia? Wright made him wait 4 hours." A younger doctor shook his head. "Still, firing him on the spot seems extreme. He was one of our most experienced emergency physicians." "Experience doesn't excuse cruelty," Judy replied firmly. "If you'd seen Mrs. Johnston's face when he dismissed her." The conversation hushed as Dr. Patel entered the locker room. Despite the long, stressful day, he still carried himself with the same calm dignity that had earned him the respect of everyone in the hospital. He nodded to the staff before opening his locker. "Dr. Patel," the young doctor ventured, "is it true about Dr. Wright?" Dr. Patel closed his eyes briefly before answering. "Personnel matters are confidential, as you know. But I can tell you that this hospital is committed to providing equal care to all patients, regardless of age or condition." His measured response left no room for further questions. As he changed into his street clothes, he felt the weight of the day's decisions. Thomas Wright had once been a promising doctor, someone Patel had personally mentored. Where had things gone wrong? Meanwhile, in the cardiac care unit, Mrs. Johnston was awake and talking quietly with her daughter. The color had returned to her cheeks, and though she still needed oxygen support, her breathing was much easier. "I still don't understand why that first doctor wouldn't see me," she said, adjusting her thin hospital blanket. "Was he just too busy?" Her daughter hesitated, unsure how much to share. "It doesn't matter now, Mom, you're getting good care." Mrs. Johnston smiled gently. "You know, when you get to my age, you can tell when people are keeping things from you. I'm old, not stupid." Before her daughter could respond, there was a knock at the door. Nurse Chen entered, carrying a small vase of flowers. "These were at the nurse's station for you," she explained, placing them on the bedside table. "From the emergency department staff." Mrs. Johnston's eyes widened in surprise. "That's very kind of them. Please thank them for me." Lisa checked the monitors and adjusted Mrs. Johnston's IV. "How are you feeling this evening?" "Much better, thanks to you and Dr. Patel," the elderly woman replied. "My daughter tells me there was some trouble about my case earlier." Lisa exchanged a glance with the daughter, who gave a small shrug. "There was a misunderstanding about your treatment," Lisa said carefully, "but it's been resolved." Mrs. Johnston studied the nurse's face. "That doctor who wouldn't see me. He's in trouble, isn't he?" Lisa sighed. This woman deserved the truth. "He's no longer working at this hospital. His treatment of you was unacceptable, and apparently it wasn't the first time." Mrs. Johnston was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "I never wanted to cause problems for anyone." "You didn't cause anything," Lisa assured her firmly. "His own actions did." As Lisa left the room, she nearly collided with Dr. Patel, now in his street clothes and ready to head home. "How is she?" he asked. "Stable. Improving. Asking questions about what happened today." Dr. Patel nodded. "She deserves answers. I'll speak with her before I leave." In the hospital administrator's office, Mrs. Reynolds was on the phone, her voice tight with controlled frustration. "Yes, I understand he's called his lawyer. No, we have no intention of reconsidering the termination. The documentation is extensive." She paused, listening to the person on the other end. "Multiple witnesses, Keith. Not just one nurse with a grudge, as he's claiming. We have statements from other doctors, nurses, even patients." She rubbed her temple, feeling a headache building. "Fine. Have his lawyer call me directly tomorrow. But the decision stands." Hanging up, she turned to her computer to type up notes from the day's events. Dr. Wright's firing would likely lead to legal challenges, but she was confident they had made the right decision. What worried her more was the culture that had allowed his behavior to go unchecked for so long. How many other issues were lurking just beneath the surface of her hospital? Dr. Patel knocked gently on Mrs. Johnston's door before entering. The elderly woman was alone now, her daughter having gone to the cafeteria for dinner. "Dr. Patel," she greeted him with a warm smile. "I thought you'd gone home by now." "Not quite yet," he replied, taking a seat beside her bed. "I wanted to check on you one more time." Mrs. Johnston's eyes twinkled. "You're checking on me? Or checking on my reaction to the news about that other doctor?" Dr. Patel couldn't help but smile. There was nothing frail about this woman's mind. "Perhaps a bit of both. I understand Nurse Chen told you he's no longer with the hospital." "She did." Mrs. Johnston adjusted herself slightly in the bed. I've been thinking about it. It's a shame, really. A shame, Dr. Patel asked, surprised. Yes. What a terrible way to practice medicine, seeing some lives as more valuable than others. She shook her head sadly. It must be a miserable way to live carrying that kind of thinking around. Dr. Patel was struck by her compassion, even for someone who had treated her so poorly. That's a very generous perspective, Mrs. Johnston. I've lived a long time, Doctor, long enough to know that bitterness hurts the person holding on to it more than anyone else. Her expression grew serious, but I am glad he won't be treating other patients the way he treated me. No one deserves that, regardless of their age. Dr. Patel nodded in agreement. We're making some changes because of what happened today. Better training, new protocols. Your experience, difficult as it was, might help prevent similar situations in the future. Then some good has come from it, she said with satisfaction. Across town, Dr. Wright finally pulled into his driveway. The modest two-story home he shared with his wife looked exactly as it always did, yet everything felt different. He sat in his car for several long minutes, dreading the conversation ahead. When he finally entered, his wife Linda was waiting in the living room, concern etched across her face. Thomas, what's happened? You sounded strange on the phone. He set his keys down carefully, the familiar action somehow comforting in its normalcy. I was fired today. What? Linda stood up, shock evident in her voice. Why, how? An elderly patient with heart disease, he began, the words bitter in his mouth. I made her wait while I handled more urgent cases. Apparently that's a firing offense now. Linda studied her husband's face, knowing there must be more to the story. In 15 years of marriage, she had learned to read between the lines of his hospital stories. Was she in serious condition? She asked quietly. Not when I assessed her, he replied defensively. Patel overreacted, treating it like some kind of elder abuse case. Linda sat back down slowly. Dr. Patel? The chief of medicine? He's always spoken highly of you. Dr. Wright paced the room, his agitation growing. It's all politics. Hospitals can't risk bad publicity these days. One complaint from a family member about their precious grandmother getting inadequate care, and they panic. Linda watched her husband, seeing not just anger but something else. Fear, perhaps, or even shame. Thomas, sit down. Tell me exactly what happened from the beginning. Back at the hospital, the night shift was in full swing. In the emergency department, the absence of Dr. Wright was keenly felt, not just in the extra workload but in the atmosphere. Dr. Garcia, who had taken over most of his cases, was ensuring that every patient received thorough attention, particularly the elderly ones. Are you doing this because of what happened with Wright? One of the night nurses asked him as he spent extra time explaining medication instructions to an older man. Dr. Garcia looked up from the prescription he was writing. I'm doing it because it's right, and because I never want to be escorted out of this hospital the way he was. The nurse nodded in understanding. Fear might not be the noblest motivation for providing good care, but if it worked, she wasn't going to complain. In the cardiac unit, Mrs. Johnston had finally fallen asleep. Her daughter had returned from the cafeteria and was preparing to spend the night in the reclining chair beside her bed. Nurse Chen stopped by one last time before ending her shift. Can I get you anything before I go? She whispered to the daughter. I'm fine, thank you. For everything, Lisa smiled. I'll be back tomorrow. She's in good hands tonight. As she walked through the quiet hospital corridors toward the exit, Lisa thought about the day's events. One small act of standing up for a patient had cascaded into something much larger. Dr. Wright was gone. New policies were coming. And most importantly, Mrs. Johnston was receiving the care she deserved. Outside, the night air was cool against her face. The stars were bright overhead, a reminder of the vast world beyond the hospital walls. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now she had done what she could. And sometimes that was enough. 3 months had passed since the day Dr. Wright was escorted from Memorial Hospital. The leaves had changed from summer green to autumn gold, then fallen to the ground, marking the passage of time as surely as the calendar on the wall in Dr. Patel's office. He sat now reviewing the quarterly reports, a cup of tea cooling beside his computer. The statistics showed significant improvements in patient care satisfaction, particularly among elderly patients. The new training protocols implemented after the incident with Mrs. Johnston had been met with initial resistance from some staff members, but had gradually become an accepted part of hospital culture. Change was never easy, but sometimes it was necessary. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, setting aside the reports. Nurse Lisa Chen entered, carrying a folder. Her confident stride and the way she held herself spoke of the quiet authority she had earned in the months since standing up for Mrs. Johnston. The hospital board had promoted her to head of nursing education, recognizing that her commitment to patient advocacy made her the perfect person to train others. "I have the latest survey results," she said, handing him the folder. "Thought you might want to see them before the board meeting." Dr. Patel flipped through the pages, nodding with satisfaction. Impressive numbers. Complaints down 30%, patient satisfaction up across all departments. He looked up at her. "Your training sessions are making a real difference." Lisa smiled, but there was a hint of something else in her expression. "We still have work to do. I overheard 2 interns yesterday discussing a difficult older patient. Their tone wasn't exactly respectful. Change takes time," Dr. Patel reminded her gently. "We can't transform attitudes overnight." "I know," she sighed. But after everything that happened, Dr. Patel understood her concern. The event surrounding Dr. Wright's dismissal had affected everyone at Memorial, some more deeply than others. For Lisa, it had become a mission to ensure that no other patient would experience what Mrs. Johnston had endured. "Speaking of which," he said, changing the subject slightly, "have you heard from Mrs. Johnston recently?" Lisa's expression brightened. "Actually, that's the other reason I stopped by. She called this morning. She's planning to visit the hospital today to thank everyone who helped her." Dr. Patel raised his eyebrows in surprise. 3 months later? That's quite thoughtful of her. She's been busy, apparently. Her daughter mentioned something about community activism, Lisa replied with a smile. Across town, Eleanor Johnston stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying a light touch of lipstick. At 78, she had long ago given up trying to look younger than her age. The wrinkles that lined her face were hard-earned badges of a life well lived, and she wore them proudly. But today was special, and special days called for a bit of color on the lips. "Mom, are you almost ready?" her daughter called from downstairs. "We should leave in 15 minutes to make your appointment with Dr. Patel." "Coming, dear," Eleanor replied, giving herself one final look in the mirror. The woman who stared back at her was different from the frightened, gasping patient who had been wheeled into Memorial Hospital 3 months ago. That woman had felt invisible, dismissed. This woman had found her voice again. Downstairs, her daughter was gathering her purse and keys. "I still think we should just drop off the cookies and flowers and be done with it. You don't need to make a whole production out of this." Eleanor shook her head firmly. "It's important. What happened that day? It changed things. Not just for me." Her daughter couldn't argue with that. The changes at Memorial had been significant enough to make the local news. Dr. Wright's dismissal had sparked a larger conversation about elder care and healthcare facilities across the region. And her mother, surprisingly, had been at the center of it all. At Memorial Hospital, the emergency department was running smoothly under the leadership of Dr. Garcia, who had been promoted to fill the vacancy left by Dr. Wright. The younger doctor had proven to be both efficient and compassionate, qualities that had earned him the respect of staff and patients alike. He was examining a patient's X-ray when an administrator approached him. "Dr. Garcia, I just wanted to remind you that the Mrs. Johnston is coming in today. Dr. Patel thought you might want to be available when she arrives." Dr. Garcia nodded. "Thanks for the heads up. I'll make sure my schedule is clear." The administrator lingered a moment. "It's good PR for the hospital having her visit after." "Well, everything that happened," Dr. Garcia frowned slightly. "It's not about PR. That woman almost died because someone decided her life was worth less due to her age. Her visit is about acknowledging that we're doing better now." Properly chastised, the administrator nodded and retreated. Dr. Garcia returned to the X-ray, but his mind was on Mrs. Johnston. He had been working the night shift when she was admitted to the cardiac unit and had checked on her several times during her stay. Her quiet dignity and lack of bitterness despite what had happened had left an impression on him. In the hospital parking lot, Eleanor and her daughter arrived precisely on time for her follow-up appointment. As they walked toward the entrance, Eleanor carried a large basket filled with homemade cookies and small potted plants. Her daughter had suggested flowers, but Eleanor had insisted on something living that would last. "Are you nervous?" her daughter asked as they approached the automatic doors. Eleanor shook her head. "Not at all. It's just a checkup." "You know what I mean," her daughter replied. "Coming back here, seeing everyone again." Eleanor patted her daughter's hand reassuringly. "Dear, when you get to my age, you learn not to waste energy on nervousness. This is something I need to do." Inside, the hospital was as busy as ever, but there was a different energy than Eleanor remembered from her last visit. The staff moved with purpose but not panic, and she noticed more interaction with patients, particularly the elderly ones seated in the waiting area. At the reception desk, a young woman looked up with a professional smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Dr. Patel," Eleanor replied. "Eleanor Johnston." The receptionist's eyes widened in recognition. "Mrs. Johnston." "Yes, of course, Dr. Patel is expecting you." She picked up the phone to announce their arrival, then added in a quieter voice, "It's an honor to meet you, ma'am. What you did for this hospital." Eleanor looked confused. "I didn't do anything, dear. I was just a patient." Before the receptionist could explain, Nurse Chen appeared in the lobby, her face lighting up at the sight of Eleanor. "Mrs. Johnston," she greeted warmly, embracing the older woman with genuine affection. "It's so good to see you looking well." "Thanks to you and Dr. Patel," Eleanor replied, returning the hug. She held out the basket. "A small token of appreciation for everyone who helped me." Lisa accepted the basket with a touched smile. "This is so thoughtful. But you didn't need to." "I wanted to," Eleanor interrupted gently. "Now is Dr. Patel available? I don't want to take up too much of his time." "He's waiting for you," Lisa assured her. "But before you go up, there's someone else who wanted to say hello." Dr. Garcia approached from the emergency department, his white coat crisp, his smile warm. "Mrs. Johnston, it's good to see you on your feet. You look wonderful." Eleanor studied him, trying to place his face among the blur of medical personnel she had encountered during her stay. "I'm sorry, I don't recall. Dr. Garcia," he introduced himself. "I was on the night shift during your stay in cardiac care. I've been running the emergency department since—" He hesitated. "Since Dr. Wright was let go," Eleanor finished for him. "It's all right. I know what happened." Dr. Garcia nodded, relieved at her directness. "Yes, and I wanted to tell you that your case has changed how we approach elder care here. We've implemented new training, new protocols." Eleanor's eyes crinkled with a smile. "So I've heard. My bridge club has been singing your praises. Mrs. Wilkins was in last month with her hip, and she said the difference was like night and day." A look of satisfaction crossed Dr. Garcia's face. "That's good to hear. Real change takes time, but we're committed to it." After a few more minutes of conversation, Lisa led Eleanor and her daughter to the elevator. As they rode up to Dr. Patel's office, Eleanor noticed a new poster on the elevator wall. An elderly couple smiling, with the words "Every patient deserves dignity" prominently displayed. "New hospital campaign?" she asked, nodding toward the poster. Lisa followed her gaze and nodded. "Part of the new initiative. There are training sessions, community outreach programs. We're even partnering with the Senior Center for Health Education." The elevator doors opened onto the administrative floor. Dr. Patel was waiting in the hallway, his face breaking into a genuine smile at the sight of Elea. "Nor, Mrs. Johnston," he greeted her warmly. "This is a pleasant surprise. When Lisa mentioned you'd be coming in for your checkup, I insisted on seeing you personally." "That's very kind," Eleanor replied. "But surely the chief of medicine has more important things to do than routine follow-ups." "Some patients leave a lasting impression," Dr. Patel said simply, ushering them into his office. The checkup itself was brief and routine. Eleanor's heart was functioning well, her medication was properly adjusted, and her overall health had improved significantly since her hospitalization. "You're doing remarkably well," Dr. Patel told her, putting away his stethoscope. "I'd like to see you again in 6 months, but there's no reason for concern." "Thank you," Eleanor said. She hesitated, then added, "May I ask, what happened to Dr. Wright after he left here?" Dr. Patel exchanged a glance with Lisa, who had remained in the room during the examination. "He's working at a private practice across town," Dr. Patel said finally, "and he's undergone mandatory sensitivity training as a condition of his medical license renewal." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "Good. Everyone deserves a second chance to learn and do better. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Patel walked them to the elevator. Mrs. Johnston, before you go, I want to thank you. For the cookies? She asked with a mischievous smile. They're my grandmother's recipe. For something much more valuable, he replied seriously. Your experience here, difficult as it was, sparked changes that were long overdue. You helped us become better healers. Eleanor's eyes grew misty. All my life I've tried to make a difference in small ways. I never thought ending up in the hospital with heart problems would be one of them. As the elevator doors closed, Eleanor caught a final glimpse of Dr. Patel and Nurse Chen standing side by side, two dedicated professionals who had stood up for what was right. In a world that often overlooked the elderly, they had seen her, not as a burden but as a person deserving of care and respect. Outside the hospital, the autumn sun cast a golden glow over the parking lot. Eleanor took a deep breath of the crisp air, grateful for each inhale, each moment. Ready to go home, Mom? Her daughter asked, unlocking the car. Eleanor smiled, looking back at the hospital building where her small story had created ripples of change. Yes, dear. But let's stop by the senior center on the way. I promised to tell them about the new programs Dr. Patel mentioned. After all, everyone should know that their lives matter, no matter their age. As they drove away, the hospital continued its daily rhythm of healing and hope, forever changed by an elderly woman with heart disease and the healthcare workers who had refused to look away.